In an age where Hoyo is dominating the anime genre with games like Genshin Impact, Honkai Star Rail, and Zenless Zone Zero, comes wave after wave of lookalikes, trying to secure a teeny tiny itty bitty little modicum of their audience. Most of the time, these developers have absolutely no shame, going as far as plagiarizing character models, entire zones, weapons, animations. Honestly, it's laughable. Thankfully, Higan Eruthyll is its own game and doesn't fall prey to theft. Well, not from what I could tell, having streamed it for several hours during its final days in closed beta. Hey, my name is Stix and welcome back to another episode of Worst Gacha Ever. The purpose of the Worst Gacha Ever series isn't solely to criticize a game, nor is it to praise it unconditionally. Rather, this video series exists as a means with which to both critique and compliment various facets of a gacha that I experienced over a set period of time. Sometimes days, sometimes months. If you enjoy this series, make sure to like the video, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification because YouTube told me if you don't, well, you probably won't get into the next beta test that you apply for. Oh, and make sure to check out the last episode in this series at the end of the video. Before we go any further, I just want to take a moment here to thank all of the absolute chads and chadettes that support this channel via Patreon. You're all freaking legends. Seriously, each and every single one of you. I would offer to give each of you a kiss, but I suffer from severe intimacy issues. Additionally, if you want to stay up to date with all the latest MMO, gacha, and gaming news, take a second here to follow Mrs. Stix and I over on Twitter. We tweet daily. Now, today's video is going to be slightly different, as typically we play fully launched games, and this video is specifically pertaining to the closed beta for Higan Eruthyll. The closed beta meaning that the game has yet to launch in a full form. Nevertheless, you're introduced to the game via an in-game cutscene, one of so many. It shows off several of the characters, or more specifically, the waifus that we're going to obtain access to shortly. Shortly after beginning playing, wait, what the actual fuck is with that face? Can we just rewind a few seconds here and take a look at that face? Because it's horrifying. That, ladies and gentlemen, is us. I know you might be wondering to yourself, why we look absolutely psychotic, and the likely reasoning behind this is due to us wasting an egregious amount of money trying to and evidently failing to pull for waifus. That much failure, well, it has an effect on you, you know? I'm sure most of you can relate. I can. I spent weeks pulling for Meryl during the Tower Fantasy closed beta, and she ended up being the only waifu that I never got. Anyway, we fall off a train, and then we wake up perfectly fine in our home, right next to my harem of waifus. We have Sherlock Boobs, Sepha Booba, and Little Dude. Yeah, I gave them pet names because I couldn't remember them otherwise. I'm sure you guys have this issue too. There are always just so many husbandos and waifus in games. It's hard keeping track of who's who. Shortly after that, we're introduced to the combat. Higan utilizes a turn-based combat system. You have a set number of energy allotted to you per round. Each waifu and each waifu's ability requires energy to use. As an example, Sepha Booba required 3 for hers, but her ability was weaker than Sherlock Boobs, who required 6 energy per ability. Each waifu also had their own unique class archetype. There were things like melee brawlers, range support, range damage dealers. They also have their own rarities, which means, like always, free players are always going to end up screwed. Probably. Now, one thing I will note here is that this is a very narrative-heavy game. The game at its core functions roughly how you'd expect a gacha RPG to. It has chapters, and every chapter has a set number of missions that you're required to work your way through. Every chapter is filled with story, though, fully voice-acted and fully animated, which is great. However, it seemed like every mission was also filled with voice acting and animated story, which left me listening to what they have to say more than actually playing the game. I love narrative in my games, don't get me wrong, but so much of this could have been condensed into a more manageable length that I'm genuinely shocked that they didn't. With this in mind though, yeah, I'm guilty of skipping parts of the story, from what seemed like non-important missions anyway. If I'm going to pay attention to this game's narrative, I'm going to do it in my own time when I can play it at my own pace. admittedly skipping what I want to skip without being judged. While the bulk of the game does consist primarily of skip the story and kill a couple monsters, there are other things to do, like ogle the waifus, which are admittedly quite divine. I love recruiting waifus in my gacha games. They're one of the things that I like doing more than actually playing them. Even the odd husbando as well, if they're exceptionally powerful, like Silver Ash and Arknights. I couldn't imagine completing the majority of those missions without Silver Ash, man. He and Surtur are absolute godsends. Higan will, at the time of release, feature quite a number of stunning husbandos and waifus to collect. Although, admittedly, and this is always the case, there were 10 times more waifus than there were husbandos, which I understand as the target demographic for most gacha games. It does consist primarily of horny teenage guys, just like Twitch, interestingly enough. Honestly, I wish I could talk more about the game and what I'd experienced within the beta, but that's pretty much everything that I encountered. Admittedly, the closed beta was definitely lacking polish. I'd encountered bugs here and there. I found the translation to be a little bit off. And given the importance of the narrative, this is something that really needs to be addressed. But just because it lacked polish didn't mean that it was inherently a bad game. This is why they hold closed beta tests after all. They have time to actively address these and actively fix them. The footage on screen right now is unfortunately not the highest quality footage obtainable. The character models and the world can get much more crisp, but these settings are what my emulator would allow me to fully emulate the game with. After increasing everything to max, the game crashed several seconds later, which means that the game definitely needs some optimization, or current emulators just aren't capable of emulating them to their full extent. Ultimately, I had fun. I don't typically stream gacha games because I feel like they tend to be quite repetitive, especially games that don't offer much variation in terms of content. Higan Eruthyll doesn't do anything out of the ordinary. It has some stunning waifus, it has some decent turn-based combat, and it has a lot of drawn-out unnecessary exposition. I think this could be a very fun game to waste some time in, but I don't think that it's really going to provide us anything that other games don't already do better. If you've played all of its direct competition, then this might be a breath of fresh air, but if not, there are any number of better turn-based gacha games out there. Now, if you're looking for the previous episode in the Worst Gacha Ever series, you can find that via this video on screen right here, or if you're looking for a list of the most populated gacha games right now, then this video right here is what you're after.